I'm excited to be here and taking part in this. I've been, talking with Tellius for some time about their offerings, and it's great to be able to kind of pull this together and tell the complete story, I think, of why this is an important and interesting technology. Alvin very kindly said some nice things about my background. Some of the things that I think are relevant is that I'm really a product guy. I build products. That's really what I'm interested in, the engineering of products. And building products, as opposed to say building services or providing services, is really not just about how you solve problems, but how you solve problems for a lot of people at scale. It's not enough you build a bespoke solution that solves one company's or one department's problems. I'm really interested in how you address these issues generically and how you build applications that solve, many problems across a very wide range of industries, scenarios, verticals, and so on. And so that's one of the reasons I'm super interested in what Tellius are doing. You can contact me after if you need any follow-up. Donald.farmer@treehivestrategy.com. That's my consulting company. I'm on Twitter, not very much. Donald Treehive. You could follow me there if you wanted to. One of the things that I'm really drives my work, drives my engagement with investors and vendors and customers, is this uncertainty about the future of analytics. We're at a point here, I think, not just because of the COVID crisis, but actually it's more of an inflection point in the world of business and in the world of technology that we don't really know where this is going. We're right on the verge of some technological breakthroughs, including artificial intelligence, machine learning, which are becoming mainstream. I mean, we all use artificial intelligence every day because it's built into our smartphones. So it's already part of our daily lives. It's starting to become more visibly part of our business life and our business decision making, but it's pretty uncertain about where this is going. So are the business intelligence, the visualization that we have, is that enough? Is that what we're doing? If we do go into technologies like data science, how can we possibly keep up with that? How do we keep abreast of all these new developments? How do we hire the right people? All those questions are really pressing for a lot of businesses. And we're very aware that we have all this data. People talk about drowning in data, enormous volumes of data, and how do we actually, get to work with that? And one of the things that matters to me very much is that the traditional world of business intelligence, the world that I've worked in, and I'm going to give you a little timeline of that in a minute, but that traditional world is to a certain extent being left behind, not by the technologies so much as by the way in which business has started to use data as an asset, as a capability. So, simply reporting nowadays is frankly it's a commodity. Every single application that you acquire, every operational application will have built-in reporting of some sort, will have some sort of built-in basic analysis. I mean, even the bookkeeping application I use as a single person company actually has pretty good reports in it, So you would expect that. You would expect to have reporting as a standard. So where do you get the new insights? Where do you get the insights that will give you a better advantage? Where are they going to come from? They're not going to come from standard reports because everybody has that. Well, it'll come from perhaps more complex data sources. And that includes the use of natural language data sources, for example. There's a lot of information in texts and so on. More advanced technologies for sure, more advanced analytic technologies. So machine learning is going to help you here. And then actually more, what I call more actionable outcomes, such as using automation and collaboration. Automation enables you to do things at a scale with a speed, with repeatability, with a precision that is difficult to do with human actions. And collaboration is critical because we don't typically make decisions, especially important, strategic, competitively advantageous decisions. We don't typically make them on our own. They require discussion. They often require debate, conversation. And how are we going to build that into the workflow of our decision making? And particularly when the workflow of that decision making is largely automated and driven by analytics and driven by data. Where's the space? Not just what's the role for collaboration, but where's the space for collaboration? within our decision-making process. That's a really interesting sort of component of that. So for all these reasons, I think we need a roadmap. We need a roadmap that kind of clears away some of this fog and gives us a set of positive steps that we can take. And these steps, in a sense, should be simple steps, each one, and each one should have value. And I'm going to talk a bit about that later. But I want to come down to like 2 principles that should guide this roadmap. And the first principle is that data without analysis is a wasted resource. We talk a lot about, you hear a lot in the industry about how data is an asset. Data is something that we can monetize. Data is a valuable resource to our company, but actually data isn't. It's the analysis of data which is valuable. Data without analysis is just a cost center. It's just sitting there waiting for something to happen to it. And it costs money to store it. It costs money to maintain it. It costs money to guarantee its quality, its security, and so on. You're spending all this money on the data, but you're doing nothing with it unless you apply analysis to it. So data without analysis is a wasted resource. So that tells you something about the importance of analysis. But the other kind of principle that I have is that analysis without action is a wasted effort. And what I mean by that is, if we're analyzing, but we're not doing anything with the analysis, then what's the point of that? And this does happen. We do a lot of analysis in business. It happens a lot in my world, where I see customers, they're continually looking at data, they're continually analyzing, visualizing, but what comes out of the end of that process? Is it really a set of better decisions? Very often not, because the process wasn't designed to drive decisions. The process didn't have the decision as the end point. It was, well, let's get all this situational awareness. And you've heard the phrase, no doubt, analysis paralysis. We do so much analysis, we can't actually make a decision at the end of it. But a lot of that happens because we're not focused on the decision as the end point of the process. So for me, data is the start of the process, decisions are the end of the process, and analysis is the glue, if you like, that holds it together, or it's the way in which these worlds come together. So this is how we build our roadmap. We start from data, we use analytics, but we have to be focused on this destination, if you like, which is the destination of decision making. What you should look for in this roadmap, how we should guide you through this roadmap, is really 3 principles. Again, I'm trying to simplify this into nuggets, if you like, that are valuable. But I think the 3 elements you should look for in your roadmap. For example, if you were looking at a strategic plan from an IT department, if you're looking at a strategic plan from a vendor or from a consultant, you would say, does it take into account these 3 things? First of all, does it take into account real world data? And what I mean by that is the data that you use in your daily work. Rather than having to go out and get new data sources or coming back with the answer as well, we'd love to do better analysis of your data, but your data isn't good enough. The problem with that is now you have to put extra effort in for that process, but your data exists because it represents your business. So can we meet you where you are today with the data you already have? And getting started with that, if the answer to solving your data problems is, well, you have to do a 2-year project and build a data warehouse, that's not going to help you. If the answer to your data problems is, well, this data is fine, but you need to supplement it with all this other data, which only we can provide specially for you, that's not going to help you. What we need is for the vendor, for the consultant, for the IT team to come to us and say, we can start where you are today. We can start with this as a first step. Sure, there may be all sorts of work done later to extend this, but today we can start with the real world data that you have. That's super important. It's, getting started is the barrier for many of these things. Do you have powerful analytics? And what I mean by powerful analytics here is do I have analytics that can give you insights that you wouldn't have otherwise? These may be insights that come because you can look at data at a scale that you've never been able to do before, data at a speed that you've never been able to do before. So sometimes in manufacturing, you might have near real-time analytics, but very often it's just data that can be analyzed with a complexity that you can't bring to it yourself. So there's limits to human ability to analyze data, but certainly models which, for example, can do prediction, which can do clustering, which can do trending, those kind of models can give you insights which you know are there in the data, but you find it difficult to draw out. And so are there powerful advanced analytics that really help you to go one step beyond what you could do on your own, just looking at a report or a visualization? Then the third element is, what actions can you take? And can you take those actions in the software platform? Do you take them in your operational platform? Do they come out of your analytic platform? Are they actions which are actually collaborative and organizational rather than, say, technical and automated? But are they the end point of this process? And again, it's very important that you have this in mind, that there's a decision to be made at the end of it. So real world data, are the analytics powerful enough to go beyond what you can do? And are the actions that can come out of this effective? And to get there, we need what I call these informal skills. I kind of, it's a lightweight kind of comment about it, but there's a term that we sometimes use in the world of design, especially experience design, about lean back and lean forward. And it's a term which is, I wouldn't say it's gone out of use, but it refers back to these early days when we were developing tablet experiences. The lean forward experience, you can see that little baby with a keyboard. As soon as you have a keyboard, I have a keyboard attached here, and I'm immediately sort of leaning forward. Like literally, I have to lean forward to use my keyboard, which gives me a particular kind of psychological focus, if you like. On the other hand, the lean back experience, Steve Jobs sitting there on a couch, that's something you don't really do with a laptop in the same way. But it's very natural to do with a phone. It's very natural to do with a tablet, that you lean back, and it's a browsing experience. It's not so focused. It's an experience of awareness, if you like, rather than focused analysis. It turns out that there are parallels of this in all sorts of ways, and search is a really good parallel for this kind of experience, because browsing is tremendously powerful, and querying requires a mindset that actually, in some ways, is less insightful. My favorite example of this, okay, so Alta Vista, Lycos, these really old search engines that we used in the late 90s and in the early 2000s, perhaps. Some of you will remember them. They typically required you to almost write a query to query the internet. You had to use the and operators. There's an advanced query syntax here on screen, use the and or not. How do you use parentheses, the plus sign, the minus sign, all sorts of ways of crafting this query to return the best results. You were almost literally learning a query language in order to get the best results from the system. That required you to have a very clear idea of what it was that you wanted back, which meant you had to do all the work in your head, convert that into a query, and then the engine would return what you'd already conceptualized back to you, which meant that you had to do the conceptualization in advance. Now, you come to if you like, the modern world, and Google is very, very different. Google has an experience which is so simplified that it even has an I'm feeling lucky button. Enter whatever you want, press the button, and information comes back. And there are three things about the information that comes back. The first is that there is a ton of it. It's hugely, massive data sources that come back. If I look for a popular search like hotels in Anaheim, where Disneyland or Disney World is, I'll get 60,900,000 results. It's crazy. There's a huge number of results asking for a hotel search, And even if I take a really obscure search, like favorite jokes by the philosopher Wittgenstein, I end up with, it's 81,500 results. And these are huge data sets that come back. And that's actually very important. It returns more information than you can handle. Now, you would think that's actually not useful. I mean, why give me more information I can handle? Well, because we're really good at browsing. If that was the result of a query, it would not help us. But the fact that there's the second thing that it has is a browsing experience, which enables us to pick up all sorts of little hints using the coloring and the highlighting and the colors and the bold text and so on and the layout. We can very quickly pick up the information that's there. And then the third thing it does is it's very, very fast, which allows us to iterate through that. So asking a vague question a browsing question, getting a ton of information back with an experience that enables us to browse and does that very, very quickly. That turns out to be much more powerful than asking a user to learn a query language so that they can ask a very specific question, which they've already had to put the intellectual effort in to conceptualize before they ask it. That way, you don't discover anything new. You just discover the answer to the questions you've already thought about. What you get with this is the opportunity through a browsing experience to learn more than you would have done before. And there's a four-part experience to that. There's the orientation. Where am I? What am I looking at? What data is here? Glimpsing. Can I see something? Oh, that hotel looks interesting. Oh, that reference to Wittgenstein looks like something that might be interesting to me. I can then examine it by clicking on it, by taking it, looking at it in a bit more deeply and saying, yeah, actually, this is the one I'm looking for. This is the better one. Or no, that's not quite right. Let me do the search again and ask for family-friendly hotels in Anaheim, or I don't know, favorite mathematical jokes by Wittgenstein. I can refine my query and get the answers back, quickly and browsable way. And then eventually, having examined and found what I want, I can acquire it, meaning I can do something with it. And that might be, I can email it, I can print it, I can share it, I can save it, I can do something with it. So this four-step process, what am I seeing in orientation? What do I glimpse? Don't give me a detailed analysis, but what can I just see and quickly pay attention to? Then I can examine the ones I'm interested in, and then I can acquire them and do something with them. This analytic process, it's very human. It's very, very powerful. It's the equivalent of Google compared to a clunky search engine or a catalog or something that's much more structured and much more difficult to use. Now, why does all this matter to what we call the boundaries of BI? Well, because we really are stretching the boundaries now. We're moving to a point where business intelligence actually has reached, I feel that it's almost reached the end of its technology kind of life cycle, and we're moving on to something new and exciting. We started, back with executive information systems, which became data warehouses in the 1980s, which became business intelligence in the 1990s, which became self-service analytics, an area I've been very involved in kind of 2010s, that sort of thing. And now we're ready for a next step. I do want to emphasize that these all have one thing in common, which is decision support. Remember, as I said, that the end point of what we do is making better decisions. That's what drives our business. And analytics without action is a wasted effort. So we're focused on decisions. And I remember, I've been working in this field long enough that I remember when we talked about decision support, somebody would ask you, what area do you work in? You wouldn't say data analysis. You wouldn't say business intelligence. You would say, I work in decision support systems. The term is actually about 70 years old. Not quite that old, but that's how old the technology term is. It supports you in making decisions. But what's really interesting about each of these phases, actually, I can tell you one thing that's interesting about each of these phases, the move from, say, data warehouses to business intelligence to self-service, is they all emerged during crises, major crises, international economic crises, typically. When I say they emerged, the technologies already existed, but they became prominent to become important at the time of crises. Data warehousing had been around for a while, but it really became important during the oil crisis. Business intelligence became really important during the dot-com crash. Self-service, companies like Tableau and Qlik really came to prominence, even though they'd been around in some cases for 10 years before. They really came to prominence around kind of 2008 at the time of the global financial crisis. Because in a crisis, people find that they need something new. First of all, they need more insight than they had before, because the way they've been doing it for the past 5-10 years is no longer relevant to the crisis. So we need more and newer business insight, and we need it quickly. We need faster time to solution because we've got to respond. And it has to come closer to decision makers. The technologies have to be intuitive, simpler to use, and every one of these technologies came closer to the point where the people making the decisions could use the technologies. data warehouses, put richer reporting in the hands of business executives. Business intelligence gave business analysts better tools than they'd had before. Self-service enabled almost everyone to do some form of analytics to drive their information, to drive their decision-making needs. And now, where are we going next? Well, this is what's going to come next. What will come next is something which has more insight, faster time to solution, be closer to the decision maker's place of work or mindset, and provide an experience that enables those decision makers to use them effectively. And in a sense, that's projecting forward from what we know of history into the future, and that's the technology that's going to come next. And at that point, it's entirely appropriate for me to move to Chris and say, tell us why Tellius is this technology that comes next.